Jai Hind everyone, welcome to Chetan Bharat Learning. In this series of videos, the ones that you see on every Wednesday, we cover events and issues relating to international relations and security issues. So on every Wednesday, we cover IR and security related issues which have been in news over the course of last 6 to 7 days. So let's start today's lecture. But before starting that, I want to talk to you about your mains answer writing. So we gave you two questions last week. One was about Quad and its significance, and another was about this chemical weapon convention, this convention against the chemical weapons. Most of you wrote decent answers. Whatever you wrote in your answers was factually correct. Nobody could dispute any of the points that you've written. However, there are two things which were missing in, pretty much every second answer. So I thought I'll quickly talk to you about that. Number one, see, when you are writing answers in IR, it would be really graceful and helpful if you also draw some illustration or you also draw some map, wherever possible at least. Now, if I give you a question on Quad, the least you could have done was to draw a map that this is India, this is Japan, this is United States, this is Australia, and this is Malacca Strait, and this is the area which is being highlighted. This whole Indo-Pacific collaboration, you could have shown it in your map work along with your answer. I think that would have really kind of given weight to your answer. Examiner would know that you know what you are talking about. So you may want to try that from this week onwards. Second thing I want to talk to you about is the way you are writing your answers. So you just state facts and that's it. See, that is the thing. Over the course of last 3-4 years, this has been the ever-growing tendency that we just look for the pointers, factual pointers, and we just mention those points. Okay, these are the pros, these are the cons, and that's it. The answer is done. However, I humbly beg to differ. Wherever required, you must restrict yourself to the important points only. But you can't take the poetry out of your life and just have mathematics in your life. Point in life as well. It should be a beautiful harmony of poetry and maths. What do I mean by this? See, when you're writing, say, an answer about convention on this chemical weapon related question, you can easily write, okay, this is the convention, OPCW takes care of it, it implements it like this and that, and that's it. Answer is over. There is nothing wrong with this answer. However, for example, couple of students like Abhishek wrote a really nice answer, Sumer wrote a really nice answer on this as well. So for example, one of the students, he started with this quote, not necessarily a quote, but a statement by OPCW. The idea is to create a chemical weapon free world. Yeah, and then he wrote OPCW Nobel Prize winner 2013 or whatever the year was. And then he started his answer like why it is so important for us to have a chemical free world order, why it's immoral to have chemical weapons in first place, what are the different ways in which chemical weapons can be acquired, and how OPCW implements this convention so that not only we dismantle the existing chemical weapons, but we don't create the new ones either. So this is what I would really want to see in each of you when you're writing your answers, that it's not just a bland display or throw off random points, but also some contextualization, also little bit of emotions. So with this, let's start today's lecture. So the first alliance or the first organization that we are going to cover is International Solar Alliance, International Solar Alliance. Okay, so before covering this, you must understand this little bit of geography, that this is our Earth, the globe, the model for it, and this is these are the parallel of latitudes. Now, the one at 23 degree north, roughly speaking, is called Tropic of Cancer, and the one at 23 degrees south is called as the Tropic of Capricorn. Now, these countries, the ones which are lying either completely or partially within this tropic, are the ones which are the major members of the International Solar Alliance. Why? Because you have studied in your geography, or you will study in your geography eventually, that these countries or this area of the Earth get abundant amount of solar radiations, solar rays. So that ways it has an extra amount of solar radiations. If put to good use, if that potential can be used, if that solar energy can be harnessed, we can create good amount of solar energy, which is not widely abundant but also climate friendly, also pollution free. So this whole organization, the one we are talking about, International Solar Alliance, it was launched by our only Prime Minister Narendra Modi, and along with the then President, I think, President of France, Mr. Hollande. So on 30th of November 2015, so you don't have to remember the date, but in 2015 at Paris, COP21. What is this? United Nations Climate Change Conference of Parties. Bharat sir will cover that with you in environment related classes, which takes place on every Thursday at the same time, 9 p.m. So at COP21 Paris, this alliance, this International Solar Alliance, was launched by Prime Minister Modi. Now, the then UN Secretary General, his name was Ban Ki-moon. He also attended this meet, and along with another 120 heads of different countries, Ban Ki-moon promised that they are also United Nations is also going to make every possible effort to support ISA in the promotion of solar energy. So in prelims, if they ask you when was it launched, 2015. Kisne launch kiya? Who launched it? Prime Minister Narendra Modi, along with the President of France, where Paris, COP21. All right. Now, next thing that you need to know about this thing is the major partners. So this whole idea, ISA, it was conceived as a coalition of solar resource rich countries which lie either partly or completely between the tropics. Again, in the prelims, the examiner may give you a question like this, that the idea was conceived as a coalition of countries which are lying or situated completely within the tropics. So this would be an incorrect statement. Even if a country is lying partially within the tropics, that country is eligible to be part of ISA. Second thing, because every now and then in the newspaper you would read about heads of the countries or premiers of the countries, prime ministers or presidents participating in ISA meetings. So one may wonder that this whole alliance is restricted to government participation only, but that is not the case. Government, bilateral and multilateral organizations, for example ASEAN, World Bank, United Nations, IMF, any international organization, corporates like Reliance, like Sun Cable of Australia, and then so on. There are so many corporations which are also going to participate in this project. Similarly, big industries and any other stakeholders, private sector is also going to be an active participant in ISA. So it's not going to be about government to government only, but a wholesome approach where private sector, public sector, civil society and international organizations are going to be the part of ISA. Now, what is it going to do? What is it going to do, ISA? ISA is not going to duplicate what various agencies are already working on. For example, there are institutes like Renewable Energy and Efficiency Partnership, which we will cover in the coming classes. This body is already working in the sector of renewable energy. Similarly, International Energy Agency, you have this. Similarly, you have REN 21. All these organizations you are supposed to know, and we will cover these as well. Renewable Energy Policy Network for the 21st century. So instead of duplicating what these already existing agencies have been doing, ISA will work with them. It will collaborate with them. It will establish a sense of synergy, so that something of greater grandeur can be done. So we know what is ISA now, and who promoted this idea, who proposed this idea? Narendra Modi ji. Where is its headquarters? I think it's in Gurugram, near Delhi. Okay, and where was it promoted? Paris COP21 2015. Now, what are its interests? Why is ISA created, and what are its objectives? Why does it exist? So the first and foremost objective is to mobilize huge amount of money. $1,000 billion is the amount that the ISA wants to mobilize, that kind of investment in solar technologies by 2030. More companies getting into solar energy, more will be the investment. More investment will bring more R&D. More R&D will bring more consumer friendly products when it comes to solar energy. Better solar panels, cheaper solar panels. You might have noticed that governments are increasingly giving subsidies to solar appliances. They are giving subsidies to industries which are working on solar energy and so on. So the idea is to shift towards solar energy. We will see in one of the lectures that just like most countries, India has also committed itself to the climate change action. So within that, India has taken a kind of a vow. It has set its goal that by say 2030 it will produce this much amount of energy through clean sources only. So it is very important for India, not only from energy security point of view, but also from climate change point of view, that India produces good amount of energy through solar source only. So first aim, this is testable in prelims, that the ISA wants to mobilize $1,000 billion by 2030. Second thing that ISA aims to do is to take the Middle Eastern nations, the African nations, South Asian nations, and Southeastern Asian nations. All these nations, it aims to bring all of them together and to kind of get all of them into a coordinated action for promoting solar finance, solar technologies, research and development, capacity building, etc. What do we mean by capacity building? Say in rural areas, for example, if you provide them solar pumps. Now, once you kind of link your solar grid with these pumps, people will be able to use it. Eventually there should be an application, so that ways. Similarly, they also want to scale up the application. What do we mean by that? By scaling up application, the idea is to have more and more things working on solar energy. For example, you might have noticed that in so many cities, traffic signals, they work on solar energy only. During the day, the photovoltaic cell, they store the energy, and during the night they work on that. So more and more applications should be solar energy based. R&D we have already covered. One more thing that this ISA aims to do is to create a common cyber platform. All the countries having an online platform existing for them, wherein they can share ideas, they can network with each other. Countries of Africa, Middle East, South Asia, East Asia, they can cooperate and exchange ideas in the field of solar energy association. Now, why are we covering ISA today? So now I hope you know at least the basics of ISA, that what is it, when was it launched, what does it aim to do, what all countries are its members. See, again, one more thing you need to know. You don't have to remember all the members of organizations like these, because you will get to know, say in few days, that one more African country has joined it, or in few days one more South Asian country has joined it. When the organizations of this orders are there, say countries having membership of more than 150 nations, 86 nations have already ratified it, this, and once almost 120 plus nations have committed to join it. You don't have to remember all the member states, you just have to know the important details. On the other hand, if say you don't know whether India is a member of East Asia Summit or not, or you don't know whether India is a member of APEC or not, or what are the nations under BIMSTEC, you are supposed to know these kind of things. When the membership, either the idea of membership is important, that, you know, for example, it's very important for India to be the member of APEC one day, so the idea of membership carries an importance. So when that is there, or the organization itself is very important, then you are supposed to know the membership. I'm not saying that the ISA as an organization is not important, but for example, my point of saying this is that you don't have to remember all the nations which are member of NAM. You know, for that matter, you must know the founding members of non-aligned movement. Similarly, here as well, you must know that France and India, they happen to be the founding members. You must know the idea of Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, and that's it. Now, why are we covering it today? Because on 8th September, recently, first World Solar Technology Summit took place. First World Solar Technology Summit. And who was the convener of this thing? FICCI. Raghav sir will cover this association with you in economics when he will teach you industries. He will cover FICCI and also one more organization of similar nature, ASSOCHAM. So these things will be covered to you. For now, it's more than sufficient for you to know that there exists this organization, a kind of a pressure group where so many industries, so many industrial units are registered. So imagine all the industries making an association, that is called FICCI, just as you know, as a layman understanding, Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So this organization conducted recently, acted as a convener in world's first solar technology summit. What did come out of this summit? 4 major pacts came out of it. The first one, partnership agreement between the Union Ministry of Renewable Energy, the World Bank, and the ISA. These things you are supposed to know. These things you must remember. First thing that came out was Union Ministry of Renewable Energy, for example, Indian government, you can say for that, just to say, and World Bank and ISA have collaborated on the idea called One World, One Sun, One Grid. If you have been following Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Independence Day speeches, so you would remember that on the last Independence Day speech, he gave this idea, one world, one sun, one grid. We are going to cover it shortly. But the idea is, the whole idea is to connect the entire world through grid. Just like China is trying to connect this whole world physically, you know, on land, and through maritime, through his initiative called One Belt, One Road. Similarly, this idea exists now, proposed by Modi ji, a very ambitious idea that we will cover in a little while. Second thing that came out of this summit was the Global Green Growth Institute and ISA. They have agreed to create a partnership to promote the to kind of create the promotion of 1 million solar pumps. All right, 1 million solar pumps will be created by the Global Green Growth Institute and ISA in coordination with ISA. I expect you to quickly Google Global Green Growth Institute and see what is this organization all about. Third thing that has been done is a memorandum of understanding has been signed between ISA and International Institute for Refrigeration in Paris. This point is not all that important, but still you must give it a cursory read. And last but not the least, partnership agreement on the implementation of 47 projects between ISA and NTPC. NTPC, recently a clerical paper was declared by NTPC as well. Some of you may have filled that. So anyways, you know what the NTPC is. So NTPC and ISA will be working together to implement 47 projects. One fact that may show up in prelims in 2020, 2021, 2022 is this. Recently, on 8th September, this date, ISA also launched its technology journal called Solar Compass 360 Degree. So if in the examination they ask you that Solar Compass 360 Degree is first equipment made by blah 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 industry to do this, or second thing they can say a program launched by Ministry of Renewable Energy that shall create blah 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 blah, and the third option could be it's a technology journal by ISA, so you would know the right option. This can be tested in the prelims. So I hope you understand what has happened in the recent meet, and I hope you understand what ISA is all about. Now, I mentioned this phrase, one world, one sun, one grid. What is that? It is a very audacious and ambitious idea. This idea stands for connecting 140 or more countries through a common grid that will be used to transfer solar power. So idea is to connect Middle East, to start with Middle East, Africa, South Asia and East Asia, Southeast Asia, to connect it all to transfer solar power. Now, having this kind of association is not new. Having countries, creating power infrastructure so that one country can transfer power to another is not new. But to have an intercontinental power infrastructure, this is not only very ambitious but is also a very new idea. Although recently Australia-based company called Sun Cable, it has started developing Australia ASEAN Power Link. You might have read it in newspapers. Australia ASEAN Power Link. It aims to connect Australia with Indonesia and then eventually with Singapore, so that Australia can, through a grid, you know how electricity functions. So let's say this is the source of energy. From here it goes to a particular grid. From grid, through wires, it comes to our households. So if you are connecting this household through a grid with the source of energy, so this is Australia, this grid can be in Australia as well, and then this household would be in Singapore. So you have connected Singapore with Australia. Similarly, the idea here is in this one world, one sun, one grid, to connect pretty much the entire world like this only, to create a series of such grids and to connect the whole world, almost whole world, at least 140 countries with a common grid. Now, as I just mentioned that Australia is already doing it with ASEAN, but to do it intercontinentally from Africa all the way to East Asia is something very audacious. The vision behind this one sun, one world, one grid is that the mantra that Modi ji gave was that the sun never sets. Keep that thing in mind, that recently if you are going to appear in provincial exam like state exams, for example, say Karnataka PCS or UPPSC or something of that sort, then they may ask you this question, that this statement was recently given in what context? The sun never sets in the British Empire. That's what they used to say. Anyways, the idea is that this sun is the idea is that the energy from the sun is constant at some geographical location globally at any given point of time. When the sun is there in Japan, it may not have been there in Asia, and likewise in Africa, and likewise when you can feel the sun rays in Africa, it might be the night time in Asia. But however, the sun is never setting, and the energy that is coming from sun is constant at some geographical level if we take Earth as a whole. So the idea is that why not when say Malaysia is getting the solar energy, why not store it and give it to Africa when it's night time in Africa? And when Africa is getting solar energy, why not store it and give it to Philippines when it's night time in Philippines? That is the basic idea. All right, so this, some people, some scholars also say that this is also Narendra Modi's response or India's response to Chinese idea of one belt one road initiative. This is how India is going to counter them, because this is more inclusive. What China is doing is, China is making infrastructure projects in your country, and then once you can't repay them, you fall under the debt trap, and then China acts like a mean money lender. You know, it goes for land swapping and all that. On the other hand, what India is proposing is very inclusive. However, there was this article in Down to Earth magazine which talked about the shortcomings of this audacious and overly ambitious proposal, and it talked about the sovereign problems, problems related to sovereignty, problems related to geography, problems related to national interests, geopolitics and all that. Even Indian government does not have the clarity about this project as of now. Indian government, the Ministry of Renewable Energy, it has declared that it will be seeking suggestions from experts. So it called for letter of intent kind of a thing. It launched that if experts want to give their suggestions, they can, and then later on it withdrew that thing as well. So right now we do not have the precise clarity about the operational significance of this thing. Nonetheless, this is what one sun, one world, one grid mean right now. The plan right now is to join Middle East, South Asia and Southeast Asia, number one. Once they are joined, then to join in the second phase, to join African nation with them. Once they are linked, then to connect the global interconnection, then to connect the whole world. That much of information is more than sufficient. Let's move on to the next news. You might have heard that India and China have agreed on 5-point plan to de-escalate LAC standoff. There was this article in Hindu by Suhasini Heather and Anant Krishnan. So before covering this news, let's quickly look at the map. You might have seen it already, and you might know already that this is the area which has been highlighted, which has been in news of late. So this area, the one on within this demarcation, this is also India's, but unfortunately it was captured by China in 1962 war. So this area, talking in sense of propriety, belongs to India, but it has been in Chinese control, and we have, for all practical purpose right now, we have called this line of actual control, that okay, India recognizes that this area is in control of China, but here this is Indian area. This area is under India's possession. In terms of ownership, even this area is India's, but in terms of say in terms of say strategic location wise, like who is controlling what area, this is Chinese controlled area. Now here there are certain locations which are very important. Pangong Tso Lake, Hot Springs, Galwan Valley, okay. These areas, here we have been seeing Chinese incursion, Chinese acting very aggressively in these areas. I'll show you another map by BBC. It mentions these locations more precisely. So this is the Aksai Chin area. Now here it is Galwan Valley, Hot Spring and Pangong Lake. Now Chinese have been acting very aggressively here. Only last evening you might have read the news that China is also installing fiber wires here, okay, optical fiber wires here in this area. Now they are not supposed to do it. The area is disputed in the sense that it is ours, but it's in their control. The only thing that they should do is that until and unless the issue is resolved, the maps are exchanged, and until and unless this issue is resolved, they are not supposed to do all these kind of developments here, and definitely not supposed to change the status quo and come forward. but Chinese have been doing it. There are multiple reasons for that. One of the reasons is that they want to intimidate India. Another reason is that China, China is not a country, it's a company, multinational company with its head Xi Jinping. Now, within China, there is lot of discontent against the government now these days. Why? Because the economy is slowing down, that is one thing. Nonetheless, there is no denial to the fact that China has pulled out maximum amount of people out of poverty over the last 30 years. But the way, for example, they handled COVID, the people were locked from outside and they were forced to stay inside. That's how a communist regime typically works. Now this guy has said that he is going to be the premier for many decades to come, and his defense ministers and all that, they also have aspirations to become the premier of China. So it is very important for the leadership of China to have ultra-nationalism within China. So they want to shift the Chinese resentment, a common Chinese man's resentment against their own state to neighboring enemy nations like India. So all these factors are also promoting. Then China is not too happy with lack of India's cooperation in One Belt One Road initiative. China always wanted India to join it, or at least not persuade its neighbors to not join it. So there are so many factors, but we have issues going on here which can seriously blow out of proportion. Nonetheless, last week Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese Premier Jinping, they agreed on certain points along the to reduce the tension over LAC. What were those points? First thing, both countries agreed that we should not let differences to become disputes. That means we should not let the difference that we have over the map, we should not let it become a dispute which will eventually become a bone of contention, which will eventually become a localized war and may end up taking the shape of a full-fledged war. Second thing, we must disengage quickly to ease tension. It's very important that we don't take forever, because if we keep on building tension, you never know that what one country may do. So things like this should not only be avoided, but if happens, should be fizzled out as quickly as possible. So we should disengage quickly. Third thing is, we must abide by the existing border protocol. When Narasimha Rao ji was our Prime Minister, he entered a series of agreements with China. As per those agreements, there was this protocol that both the armies were supposed to follow, both the countries were supposed to follow. These protocols included, for example, to have confidence building measures with each other. For example, not deploying really dangerous ammunition and arm along the line of actual control, so that the other country feels secure there, that okay, we don't see any negative intent from China's side, because they just have their forces there, they don't have really dangerous weapons deployed here. Second thing, there must be a hot line between the Indian army and the Chinese army, just in case if they feel that Indians are not following the protocol or the Chinese are not following the protocol, they can quickly talk to each other, and through discussion they can manage the issue instead of having some localized dispute, and so on. There were so many such protocols which Chinese and Indians have been following all these years, but for the last few months especially, and the last few years in general, ever since Modi ji has become the Prime Minister and there Xi Jinping has become the President, this thing we have seen. First, a few years ago, we have seen dispute around Doklam. Now you see something of the similar nature in Aksai chain. Third thing, that out of 5 points that two countries have agreed, that yes, we should abide by the already existing protocols. Fourth thing that we must do is dialogue, regular dialogue between our National Security Advisor Ajit Doval. Why NSA? Because I have taught you in the first class of IR that NSA has physical proximity with your Prime Minister. That is the biggest advantage that NSA has. Not only NSA is included in most of the security architecture of your country. Not only NSA is part of all the important security architectures of your country, but also because NSA has physical proximity with your Prime Minister. So India's NSA and their special representative, Mr. Wang, they should be regularly talking, discussing things. And last, working towards new confidence building measure. We should come up with new such measures which give confidence to India as well as to Chinese that things are not going to blow out of proportion. The situation will continue to be in this state of peace and tranquility. But can you see a couple of things are missing here in this 5-point plan between India and China? Couple of things are missing here. What are those? First thing is, like, or you can say like both the issues are of same side of the coin. This is Aksai Chin, say, and this is India. Until April, if Chinese were here, since April they have come into this area. So fine, you are going to build confidence, you are going to not let the dispute difference become the dispute. But what about this? What about the going back to the status that we had till April? The status quo which was existing till April should have been restored, or it should be restored now. So there was not much about that. India did not categorically call China to retreat from its position. It has aggressed on at Pangong and Despang and other parts of the LAC. So that is one thing that should have been there in this 5-point program, that fine, now we are going to live peacefully, but nonetheless, you must go back. If we go like this, then tomorrow China may come here and then they may ask you to sign another 5-point plan to have peaceful neighborhood. Then tomorrow they will come here and then they'll make you to sign another 5 similar kind of point plan to have peace. So there can't be a discussion unless they retreat to the pre-April status quo. So that is one thing that has been missing. Anyways, whatever happens with this thing, it shall be in the newspapers in the coming weeks, and I'll get back to you with this news. And next, G20. It was in news recently. Why? Because G20's educational minister, as you can see from G, it's group of countries, okay? So their educational ministers, they had an online meet, they had Zoom meet, virtual meeting, where the educational ministers talked about continuity in the times of crisis, early childhood education, and internationalization of education. And who hosted this G20 summit? Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I don't think this information is useful for your prelims perspective. I don't see it showing up in the paper. Nonetheless, you know it. But you should know what G20 is, why it was conceived as an idea, where did it come from. So G20 is an annual meeting of leaders from the countries of largest and fastest growing economies. So there were economies already there in late 90s, for example Japan, for example Germany, USA, UK. These countries were already there as the largest economies. And then you had countries which were emerging, but very fastly emerging. For example Russia, for example India, Brazil, all these countries. So if you collaborate these emerging countries as well as large emerging countries in sense of economy and the large countries, then we call it a G20 grouping. You don't have to again remember the name of all the G20 nations. Couple of facts that you have to remember from membership point of view, I'm going to cover. First thing is that its members account for 85% of world GDP. So you can well imagine the number of people, number of industries, number of the quantum of trade that these G20 leaders carry, and 2/3 of world's population. Formally, this G20 summit is known as, its formal name is Summit on Financial Market on, it should be given in the notes as well, Financial Market and World Economy, and World Economy. That is its formal name. Just like you have one name for your home, one name for your school or college, one name for your Tinder profile. So this is its school or college or registered name. So formal name, submit on financial markets and the world economy. Now what are the members? Like, why did G20 come into picture? In 97-98, these economies, Asian tiger economies like Malaysia, Indonesia, Philippines, these countries, they faced crisis. At that time, it was acknowledged that the participation of major emerging market economies is also needed. These economies, their participation is also needed with these countries. With these countries, why? Because world is increasingly getting connected. Their investments are these countries are making investments here, these countries are providing goods and services there. If these countries fall, heat is felt in those countries as well, and if something happens here, then negative repercussions are felt here as well. So the world is increasingly getting connected. Therefore, it is not enough to have G7 summits, but we should also have the participation of these countries as well. So it was felt, and then G7 was expanded. Russia and G7 countries, if you join them, then this is known as G8. So G7 plus Russia makes it G8, and then there are these rest of the countries that you don't have to remember all of them. Australia, India happens to be a part of it. European Union as an independent body also happens to be the part of G20, although so many European Union members like Germany, France, UK is not there anymore, and some of other nations, they're also part of G20 in their individual capacity. EU is also there. All right. So this is G20. You don't have to remember the names of all the countries. You should just know the idea of it. So that was it as far as your IR was concerned last week's. I'll see you on Friday now with the issues relating to polity over the last 1 week at 9 p.m. on Saturday. Take care.